Hi there. Today I'm having a conversation with Mark Martin of Schultz Miller Construction based out of Seattle, Washington. This is going to be the first in a series of conversations with Mark about building custom legacy homes. And today Mark and I discuss a number of topics including project management, sustainability, renovation versus new construction, assembling your team before you make any decisions. And those decisions include what you're going to build and the land that you're going to build it on, client advocacy, and so much more. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did, and stay tuned to the next time that Mark joins us to continue this conversation about building legacy homes. All right, today we have a special guest, Mark Martin from Schultz Miller Construction Company out in Seattle. Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and about Schultz Miller?
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me here today. Our company is Schultz Miller. We're about a 100-person firm in Seattle, and our focus and motto is building relationships that last, which is, when it comes to construction, it's really building for, we build for a lot of high net worth families in the Seattle market and are gravitating towards the luxury type home model. So it's a different type of market. But it's one that we excel at. And so these are homes that I tend to say these are very fussy homes. They're very architecturally driven. They're complicated. They take a lot longer than anyone would imagine. But it's a really rewarding process, and we get to work on some of these amazing homes. So I'm at my role here as a project manager. So, and construction stratification, there's owners and project managers and then superintendents, and then carpenters and laborers. And so I'm the one that kind of runs the schedule and the money part for our big projects.
Some of the most important parts in keeping a project on track right there.
Yes.
And the work that your firm does is amazing. Some really, really impressive homes. So I encourage everyone to go and check out your website and
Thank you.
see the work that you're doing. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about sort of your background and origin story, and how you got started in construction?
Yeah. Well, by trade, if we just went back maybe 15 years ago, I'm actually a CPA. And so
Okay.
I worked for one of the big 3 accounting firms, Ernst & Young. And so I have a background in finance, but also had the bug to, want to do my own thing. And to me, that was building homes and starting off with a project with my brother, in which we did about 60 or 70% of the work ourselves, and would live in these homes, and it'd be down to 1 or 2 walls standing and a tent or a tarp, and
Wow.
we would do a lot of that work and be the ones that learned, and we'd be reading the book on how to do it because there wasn't an internet, so to speak. And
Yeah.
it'd be one hand would be the book, and the other hand would be the spray gun or the nail gun, and we kind of just muddled our way through it, and then every year and every project we just refined and got a little bit more dialed, became a little bit more subcontractor based, and then I've had amazing opportunities to team up with different individuals throughout my working career as a builder, and have worked from being the sole proprietor, where I'm just a guy in a truck and running a small business, to a 10-person firm running big projects, and to where I'm at now, which is at a 100-person organization. So I've seen the whole gamut of the type of contractors that are out there and available to build homes.
Yeah. And so how long have you been with Schultz Miller?
We've been here about 6 years.
6 years.
So been building really since my first project was with my mom and dad in 1978.
Oh, wow.
And then high school and college, and then I've been an active builder probably since 1995. So I hate to say it, but that's coming on about 28 years of building now. So
Yeah. What makes some of the projects that you work on unique?
yeah, that's a great question. I think it's really the complexity and the layering. When you buy a home in a development, that is typically, they say cookie cutter, and I don't think that's really a fair way to say it, but they're consistent. It's a known, the lot is a certain size, it's the same foundation, it's the same framing package, it's the same millwork package. There's not a lot of choices. You have a brown countertop or a white countertop. It's
Yeah.
pretty narrowed choices. And our projects are complex. So it's not just, do this. It's like, well, how do we do that? And it's involving the architect and the engineer and the interior designer and the homeowner and our team. And so I think that complexity is really a neat part of what we do, and that we are. Yeah, one of my coworkers said, we're building one-off prototypes. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
no one has ever
Yeah.
built this
Yeah.
home, so we don't know. We don't know how long it's going to take, and we don't know how long it's going to how much it's going to cost, because it's not been done.
Yeah.
And that's a really neat end of the spectrum, to be at that level and building homes that are really special and unique.
And I can imagine you're working on some of your lots are probably some pretty challenging lots. It's not your typical sort of suburban plot that you're dealing with, right?
Yes, even my most recent project, the foundation uh, company. I mean, he was just shocked at just how. I mean, it was probably before we even had a board built or a stick onto the foundation. It was about 15 concrete pours.
Oh wow.
Because you could only
Yeah.
get into so far, and you had to
Yep.
build this before you could shore up the other part. And
Mm,
that's an amazing, when you have foundations that take 6, 7, 8 months. Some homes get built faster than that.
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. And you're just doing the foundation then.
these are marathon homes, not
Yeah.
not sprints.
And so for these highly custom, highly unique homes, how are the clients finding you? Are they going to you first? Are they going to an architect first? Are you guys brought in as a team? What's sort of the process of how you find your
Yeah,
client?
our the predominance, I would say, high 90 percentile of our work comes directly from architects. And looking at your program and what you do as well, that it's really that fiduciary trust, your who your advisor is. And for us, it's really working with architects that know what they're going to get from us, what
Yeah.
the end result's going to be. It's going to be how are we going to treat our customers, our fairness, our integrity, and ultimately quality as well.
Hmm.
But I think when you talk about the hierarchy of the referral, that it really comes mainly from architects that are aware of what we do and what have consistently produced over the last 40 something years. So
And those
um,
relationships are everything, right?
they really are.
Because if an architect is selling the client on an end experience, they need a contractor that they can trust to deliver that end experience.
Yes.
Or else they're who knows what's going to happen.
And I think when, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and when you're talking to your clients and how you approach things, I always say, you always tend to meet with your builder or your architect when it's sunny out and everything's good, and you're going off to your kid's sports game. But it's when it's raining and the
Mhm.
hillside's starting to come down and the house is leaking, that's when you really need to know who you're dealing with and how they respond in tough situations, because it's tough to build homes. There's a lots of pieces to these. So, that's where we really try to be the experts and how to navigate that for clients. And I think that's what the architects see, is that, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do things that, maybe are a challenge, but ultimately it's how you deal with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what we've really refined in our approach.
Yeah, that's why I like to tell people that too. You gotta pick a team that you can communicate with well, because if you can't sort of openly express what you're thinking and what you're feeling, when you get to that point where you have those hard conversations, whether it's about a challenge on the construction site, or a financial challenge, or one thing or another, there's going to be issues that come up in every single project. And so
That's exactly
how you
right.
how you deal with it, how people deal with it and work together as a team really can set set the projects apart from each other.
That's really well said.
And so when it comes to that, so how do you approach project management? Not just in the hard times, but in the good times, and coordinating everything.
Yeah, I thought a lot about that question, and really my clients, the men and women and families that I work for, are really sophisticated, smart people. It doesn't mean, and I think why I say that is because they don't need to get construction. That's why they've hired us to do the work. So my challenge and my goal on these projects is to simplify the construction speak and to make it really simple, and to be able to say, here's your two choices, here's where I think you should be going, and here's what I recommend. But ultimately, there's a pro and a con to these, and most things in life and in building are a matter of choices. And so I really try to take the choices and make it to something that they can bite into and make a decision. And it often is, we're building some walls right now, and there's a choice between doing a concrete wall or a steel wall. And there's a pro and a con. There's an excavation risk with the concrete that you don't have with the steel. And so I try to make all of that into a really easily and identifiable question, and then more importantly, an answer from the client. And I think that's what it really boils down for me, is just that the approach to the schedule, the budget, and the questions, to make it simple for my clients to enjoy the process and have a little fun while they're building, but also to be involved.
Yeah, exactly. And they might not be able to see the end goal or the end result of some of those choices either, because most often they haven't been through a major construction project before. So, where you have these situations come up, and you have to present the client with different options or different choices or different paths forward. They might only see, what they know, but we can see sort of 5 steps down the road, and what the result is on those actions. So
That's
I
exactly
think
right.
being able to explain that in a way that they can understand is definitely a skill set. So how do you, like, in terms of sustainability and efficiency and building envelopes, is that a priority for your firm? Is that a priority in your work? Is that something, do you have like a goal that you're trying to achieve with each project, or is it more sort of holistic, design, and then making things as efficient as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be I think I would lose a lot of credibility with their viewers and listeners if I was to say, we're really a green approach to building, and we're building a 10,000 square foot home. There's a balance to what you can call sustainable and approach. But what I can say is that absolutely the systems are utmost importance to us. So are they operating efficiently? Are they, is it commercial grade? Most of our homes will have 2 or 3 or 4 furnaces, and are they built at that right commercial level so that they're going to last? So, are they sustainable in that the products that we use, we're building legacy homes. And I can tell you that I can go back to a home we built 30 years ago and it still looks brand new. And the reason is because we're using materials that last and systems that are built to be able to go into these type of homes. And my last major project was a geothermal home. So, even though the cost of the geothermal was pretty expensive, there's no heat pumps, there's no outdoor air handlers. So it's better for the neighborhood. It's better comfort for the client, and it's a green solution.
Yeah.
The roof is slate, so it's probably a 50 to 100-year roof.
Yep.
The materials on the exterior are bluestone, which, you can go to Pennsylvania and upstate New York and find bluestone patios that have been installed for 200 years. So, we're building large homes, but we're building in materials that are going to last. And so I think our approach to, and then even so, not only at the exterior level that I mentioned, but also on the interior level is, are we building, with good building practices, good envelope science? Our house is breathing, is the air quality correct? And all of that is absolutely part of what we do, and really struggle to adapt because materials are changing. We're installing them in ways that maybe aren't conventional. And so really understanding how that science works is really how we really lean on the architect, the engineers, and the building science people to help us navigate that and build it correctly.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast things change, and I do the same thing. I rely on a lot of the contractors to help me along the way as well,
Yes.
because it's impossible for everyone to know to be up to date on every single little thing that's changing.
Yeah, and the one thing I don't know if you guys do a lot of this, but is mock-ups. So
Sometimes, yeah,
when we want to look at how we're going to construct a building wall, we'll build a little 6x6 section and have everyone there looking at it. Well, what about this? Should we flash that? Should we, where's that how's that going to be solved? So we really try to get a good sense of what we're doing before we start too.
Yeah. And a lot of times, I mean, there's so much importance on the building envelope, building the envelope correctly, not just for thermal, but for drainage and moisture and managing condensation, stuff like that. But even getting back to materials, I'm sure that the types of legacy homes that you're working on, I'm sure you don't have to talk people out of like wanting to install vinyl windows and vinyl siding, right? You probably don't have that challenge that some people, contractors or architects that might work on smaller projects and people with smaller budgets, they might look at vinyl windows or vinyl siding as a great alternative, saying like, oh wait, I can install this vinyl siding and I don't have to repaint it, and it's good for 20 years or 30 years. And or same thing with vinyl windows. And a lot of time I've spent talking with clients on sort of the downside of those different materials, and how vinyl windows don't perform well.
Right.
And especially in areas where that get like hot to cold transitions, and you have that thermal expansion and contraction, stuff like that. So
yeah, and I think even in I also like the idea of if you can use a lesser expensive product and still make it look and work well. But with vinyl, you have to be really careful with the black exterior, because it heats up too much, and at least in our climate. So if you are going to use a lesser grade product, at least you're using think about how you're using it in the application. And the other thing with vinyls is I always like to make sure there's a trim around them, so that they could be removed if they, a lot of these new hardy designs and all that, the trim goes right through the window, and basically to replace it is very tough. Very challenging. So I always think of my exit plan as well if I use something like that.
You mentioned bluestone patios, and it just kind of like I was just at a project this morning, a house this morning, checking it out, and it's a 100-year-old house, and it has this amazing bluestone patio in the back, and it got me thinking about renovation versus new construction, and when does each approach sort of make sense? When does it make more sense to renovate, or when does it make more sense to go forward with a new construction?
Yeah, and what I like about that approach too is I think it really involves the architect. It takes all the stakeholders. It's the architect, the contractor, and the homeowner to really develop what they think the plan can be. And I often see in remodels that there's a concession. You have to give up something in order to save that structure. And to me, the biggest thing on it is the tipping point. So at what point did you do so much work to the existing home that it really should have just been torn down? And that's when you really have to ask the hard questions, like have we gone too far? Have we replaced everything on it, yet we've still kept the old foundation? And when you get to that point, when I look at an old foundation, I think of that it's not as structurally sound. It might not be the earthquake. It might not be waterproof correctly. It might not have the drainage. It may not have a sufficient crawl space or slab on grade to allow for, renovation and easy adjustment. So it's a very complicated question, but I think the cost is only one piece of it. And that you really have to work with the architect and decide, so what I start with cost, I look at a couple of things on that, Chris. I look at that it probably to get out of the ground and get your house started, it is about, if you put $1 in for new construction, you would put about 33 cents in on the remodel.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a chart, which I can show your listeners, but basically it is, so if you have a new foundation versus remodeling or adding on to a foundation, that you end up spending about 75 cents more on new construction to get out of the ground. So on an example of a 3,000 square foot home, to start off as a brand new home, it would cost you about $400,000 to get whole. Mm-hmm. Where if you were to remodel and only add on 500 square feet to your existing 2,500 square foot home, it would be about $100,000. So, or $133,000. So I think that's a little tough to understand without a lot of charts, but there is a cost to starting new, because you basically are tearing down a livable structure. And I think that's the hardest challenge for people, is that, I have a house I can live in now, and you're asking me to demolish it and start over.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's just kind of the process of letting go. But in order to do that, you have to spend money to put a new foundation in. You have to frame it. You have to roof it. You have to do all that. And that's where I'm saying that you have to spend a significant amount of money to get back to where you're starting. Mm-hmm. Now, on a remodel, to me, the biggest issue is that you're using different parts of a house. You're adding on and getting that homogeneous look, like you ran out of money in the basement, and so you didn't spend as much money there. And I think that's where having the architect lay out the vision of what you can do with that house. And I think, to me, that's a big starting point on remodels, is what are you going to get at the end? And the hard part about a remodel is that the cost to demolish things, and a lot of things need to be done by hand. So it's not like a big track hoe comes in and just raises the whole building and you start over. This is you moving drywall to get to the electrical, removing a cabinet to get to the plumbing. So there's a little bit of an uncertainty in what's behind the walls. And that's when it's much harder, when you're talking about cost, to really narrow down the cost of a remodel versus when you're starting off on a blank canvas on a new construction. So the cost, to me, is the biggest part of the equation, in knowing what you're going to get from a new construction versus a remodel.
And then also you have to keep your end goals in mind too, right? Cost, like you said, cost is one part of it, but it's not the only part. And so,
right.
And so, what is your end goal? What is the thing that you value the most? And how can the work that gets proposed and gets constructed, how does that fit in with your goals and your values?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you look at what you can, what you're going to give up as far as like a ceiling height. So, most older homes are 8-foot ceilings or less. And a new construction, you might be designing at 9-foot or 10-foot.
Yeah.
You can get better R value in your walls, how much insulation you can put in when it's a 2x6 construction versus, likely your old 2x4 construction. So, I go back to livability and comfort.
Yep.
And all of those things. And it's harder on a remodel. You may have floor squeaks. You may have, so it's a balance of what you want to get versus what you have. And it's hard. And it really is a case by case, but you need to have a scenario for both in order to really make a decision of what's a better path. But I can tell you that if you, the challenge is it's like a string where you pull and or a sweater where it's got the little, string coming out and you start pulling on it. With a remodel, it's really hard to know where to stop. And you have the same aspirations as new construction, but maybe that's not realistic. Maybe you need to change out the siding or have a little mix and match. Maybe everything can't be the exact same flooring. Maybe you have to do that. So, there's a lot of kind of knowing who you are that needs to play into it as well, of what you're willing to accept. And, we've done amazing remodels that are seamless and beautiful, but it ends up costing more than what they planned, usually because we discover unknown.
Yeah,
So
always.
yeah. And maybe it sure would have been nice to have a 3rd-car garage, but we didn't have room for it because we didn't move the house. And so I think those are all decisions that have to be part of your program, and really deciding. And then I think it's important to bring in the contractor, like I said, and the architect and the homeowner and other people to look at, what we use the term ROM, which is a rough order of magnitude.
Yep.
What's the pros and cons of a new construction versus a remodel, and what's the ROM of this, and to do this, and compare it, and then ultimately make your decision.
Yeah, and I think for people that are listening, we're sort of talking about large scale projects here, and not like just a kitchen renovation where you're changing out your cabinets. Obviously, we're not. If someone just wants to have new cabinets and countertops put in, we're not suggesting that they knock down their entire house. Just to clarify that, really quick.
Yeah, and I would say though, even on those types of situations, is that I call it the margin. So if you're doing a kitchen remodel, does that mean you're going to actually ask the contractor to move into the dining room? Are you going to be changing out, more than one window? Are you going to, so I think it's being clear on what your program is. And that's what happens on these remodels is it kept expanding. And so I think your ability to really focus and narrow down what your scope is and your specifications can help to make that a lot cleaner process than someone saying, well, my remodel, I'm costing an extra $50,000. Well, that's because you added 2 rooms and, changed out all the windows and did a new roof and a new so I think, but yeah, certainly we're not suggesting that at smaller scale remodels that even contemplate tear down, but to at least think about that margin and scope.
And then it also sort of depends on the context, right? The neighborhood that you're working in, and what your long-term goals are. If you plan on staying in that house for 20 or 30 years, or is it a house that you're going to live in for 10 years and then sell it? And then what's the resale value like? And you kind of have to think of not only your immediate project, but your sort of long-term future.
Yeah.
When you're making these decisions.
I was talking to a builder friend yesterday, and I was talking to him about some costs that he was involved with now, and he looked at on his own personal home of a tear down versus a remodel, and the foundation that he actually ended up building on his new home was the exact same as the old one, or relatively close. But the engineer got involved and wanted the foundation to be X-rayed for steel. Then he had to spend almost as much money to bring up the old foundation up to current code. Yep. And then there's not waterproofing, there's not the drainage. So but again, that was in the process, he did consider it, because we do want to save materials if we possibly can. We want to save resources, but sometimes that challenge of trying to save is foolish. And you have to be aware of that there are cost and ramifications to saving old things too. So
and then for the people who are on the extreme end of the sustainability, they'll always argue that with the embodied carbon in the materials that are already present in the house, it's more sustainable to renovate. But again, not everyone has those sort of same goals, and you have to look at it holistically. And
the other thing with the carbon footprint and sustainability is that one thing we do is we have a Habitat for Humanity location here, and they come through all of our homes. And they remove whatever they can. Sometimes it's hardwoods, cabinets, light fixtures. So we try to recycle or reuse almost anything we can out of the existing home, and then we recycle the materials. So the wood becomes hog fuel for fuel. Concrete gets ground up and comes back onto the sites as a form of a temporary driveway.
Yeah. Okay.
So we do try to incorporate some good sense into it's not just a tear down going into the landfill. and then hopefully the systems that we put in, the new systems and the insulation and energy efficiency reduces the carbon footprint over time.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
solar or the geothermal or whatever it might be that actually has a great impact to the environment.
Yeah, I'm working on another project right now, a custom home in Harvard, Massachusetts, and it's the people have a 5 acre lot, and there's an existing house on the property that they've been living in with for the past couple of years, and they're going to live in that house through construction. But we're going to build a new house behind it, and then we're going to tear down the old one. But that was based again on their end goals, and they wanted something that was incredibly resilient. And so it's actually going to be an ICF house,
Oh, great.
insulated concrete form. For those who don't know, my first time working on an ICF house, so I'm really excited. That's footings are going in next week, so it's going to be exciting to see that go up. But they actually found, and the clients, they're both aerospace engineers, and they found this outdoor boiler system that can burn any type of wood, right? So all pine trees and crap trees that get taken down, they're just going to stack up. And with the existing house, I guess what they can do is they're going to recycle as much materials and donate as much materials as they can, but they're going to hand cut all the studs from the house and all the rafters and all the floor joists, and they're going to be able to burn them in this type of outdoor boiler, and that's going to produce heat for the hydronic radiant system that's going to be going in the floor. So,
That's
and I think
fantastic.
I think he calculated out, engineers are engineers, right?
Yes.
And he calculated out like how many years worth of fuel he's going to get by sort of burning his old house down in this boiler system that's going to pump through heat through his radiant floors. So
Oh, that's
it's got
great.
there's so many different things that you can do out there. It's crazy. We talked a lot about goals and the construction process, but what about before a project happens? How far in advance should homeowners be contacting a professional, whether it's an architect or a contractor or both?
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to a couple of your podcasts on lot selection, and I think that in our market there's a lot of infill lots, so you're already in an established neighborhood. It's not as much of a land development, or a rural setting, so it's more urban. But I think it goes down to the very beginning with the architect, the lot selection, and bringing in a contractor, even if it's just to kind of learn how people think and process information. But
Hmm.
for me, when I look at a lot, I want to look at access. I want to look at the utilities. I want to look at just the neighborhood surrounding, is in and is the roadway accessible for large vehicles?
Yeah.
Is it a steep slope? Is there going to be a water issue? Or are we going to have to detain water? So to me, that you can look at two lots side by side, and one could be $50,000 more expensive to build on than the one next to it, and it really can be across the street difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think we offer, one thing we do is called a pre-construction. So it's a nominal amount of money to hire us to do, it's not a commitment for us to build for you, but it's a commitment to give you some
Mhm.
rough order of magnitude numbers and some assessment.
Yeah.
So I think early and often is what I would say on that one, Chris.
I always try to tell my clients to bring in a contractor for pre-construction services. I mean, it is so valuable. It just cannot be explained on how great of an idea that is for anyone taking on a project. So yeah, you're going to spend some more money up front, but you're going to avoid so much in the end, so many problems in the end.
Hmm.
And I always talk about clients should be contacting an architect before they purchase a lot, right? And a lot of times that doesn't happen. They see a lot like, oh my God, it has this amazing view, or a lot of a good amount of land, or has this quality or that quality, and they go ahead and buy it, but they haven't had the ability to think through about what could be built on that lot. So I always advocate of contacting an architect before they purchase the lot, but I also like bringing in the contractor for pre-construction services before you purchase a lot, because when I go and look at a piece of property, I might be looking at zoning restrictions and topography restrictions, and I'm not looking at the same things you are, right? I'm not thinking about how am I going to get a crane in here, or how am I going to, where the concrete truck's gonna come in, or where's the crew going to park and stuff like that. And so
Mhm.
there's a lot of benefits for having a contractor involved before you purchase a lot, especially if you're building the types of homes that you guys build.
Yeah, and I remember you even talked about or have written about the fact that, when people talk about these budgets, it's usually from a cocktail party or,
Mm.
from the church pew. It's not always about a scientific approach to what it's going to cost. We want to spend $300 a square foot. Well, that's great, but how did you come up with that?
Yeah,
Or, and then you take the
exactly.
lot cost and all that. And I think what you've said before is that oftentimes the bucket of money that's actually left after taxes,
Mhm.
contractor fee, lot, utilities, development, all that is actually a lot smaller than people think. So,
Yeah.
maybe the choice of that lot isn't the right lot. Maybe the view lot isn't worth not getting the home you want,
Mm.
or you end up with such a small home because that's what's left in the budget after paying too much for a lot or more than you can reasonably afford. So I think it really is developing that team, and it's also a good trial.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't get along with that contractor. The
Yeah.
pre-con was a good use of money to find out that I didn't want to use him or her.
Mhm.
So I think it's really a really sound advice to get a team early and pursue it
Yeah, I really
together.
think so too. And I always say, like, if you already own your land, if you own the property already, and that's what you're going to build on, you should be assembling that team at least a year before you want to start building. But if you don't own that property, I would say, I mean, it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, whatever. But if you don't own the property yet, and you're listening to this episode, assemble the team, contact your architect and your contractor, and get that team going before you make that land purchase. I think there's incredible benefits for having that input. Next, we've talked a lot about the architect and the contractor guiding the client sort of through the process, through these all these decisions that they have to make. But what about the client advocating for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big part of anything you do in life is, you know, treating, I mean, it's almost goes back to the everything I learned in kindergarten book,
Hmm.
that you really want things to be, if it doesn't seem right, it probably isn't right. And your skill set from whatever the person that's building you're building for usually can have some sort of crossover to construction. So as far as client advocacy, I think that the things that I like to see in a program that I think that makes sense is to be involved, and to be specific with what you want.
Yes.
So, hey, Chris, I really want a cool contemporary home, and you're like, "Oh, okay, well, what does that mean? You know, is it Miami Vice 1982, or is it something else?" And so that's the Pinterest. That's, hey, this is really neat. What does this look like? Well, we can do that, but that's a very expensive approach. We could do this. This is a more cost effective. So I think avocation, meaning that you're actually engaged and you're
Yes.
doing things that explain what you want, not hand waving, but specifics. And there's so much information out there, whether it's House or Pinterest or Fine Home Building magazine. I mean, any of those type of platforms are available for research and to give
Hmm.
specifics. And then I think being, following good project management, you know, having weekly meetings, with your architect and designer and builder, even if they don't want to. And if they don't want to, that's kind of a red flag to me that,
Yeah, exactly.
something might be wrong.
Exactly.
So at that meeting, I want to look at the budget. I want to look at the construction schedule and the milestones
Hmm.
and kind of the forecast of where we're going. And then most importantly, as you speak with the client, is what do you need from me? So what decisions do I need to make this week?
Mm-hmm.
What decisions do I need to make in 2 weeks? And what decisions do I need to make in 2 months?
Yeah.
And really understand what your role is in this process, and being on top of it. And when they ask for a decision on the windows, you've kind of said, we can't afford, we don't want to do vinyl, but maybe we'll do a composite, or we want to do a wood window, but we're not expecting you to be experts, because that's what you've hired us for. But I am expecting that my clients come with the knowledge and the at least the intent to be able to be engaged.
Yes. That engagement really can go a long way. And not only that, but speaking up. If you don't like something, right, just, you're not going to hurt our feelings. If I design a kitchen layout and you don't like the kitchen layout, don't keep it to yourself just because you want to hurt my feelings, because you're not going to, right? Tell me that
Yeah.
you don't like it. Or if you're doing a mock-up of a trim package or something like that, and if the client doesn't like it, speak up. That's,
Yeah.
be engaged and speak up is the best.
We heard on our last project, the architect was meeting with the homeowner and showing them some examples of millwork, and the homeowner said, hey, I really like sprayed millwork finish. So there's really two types of millwork finish. There's a sprayed finish, and then there's what's called tipped off or brushed. So much older homes, they usually spray it and then they brush it. It's a real wonderful art, and you can see the brush marks in the millwork, but just knowing that, he says, well, I used to be a college painter, and I love, really clean millwork, no brush
Yeah.
marks. And
Yep.
so just knowing that gives us a lot of information on how the cabinets are going to be built, who we're going to use to paint. So, those little things are helpful. And our job as a contractor and architect is to bring those out of you. Do you like this or do you like this? So,
Yep.
I go back to the teamwork. I'm not suggesting that you need to be an expert in anything other than to be able to be part of a team, and to be able to speak up.
Yeah, and or be an expert on the way that you want to live, right?
Yes.
And be reasonable or realistic on how you want to live. And I always like telling the story of people. You ask people what they want in a house, and 9 out of 10 will say they want a house that's great for entertainment.
Uh-huh.
It's like, okay, great. So how often do you entertain? Oh, once a year for 5 people. It's like, why do you need a great house for entertainment then? So, set it up, be aware of your daily and weekly routines throughout the different parts of the year, and how you actually use your house, and then speak up to how you're going to use your house. And that will help your architect and help your contractor in setting it up for you to have, the best solution.
Yes.
Excellent. So, what is one thing that a homeowner can do to have a more successful project?
Well, I think it's to start. I mean, to quote Stephen Covey, or butcher Stephen Covey, is to start with the end in mind.
Yeah.
Meaning, what do you want to get out of this house? And what's important to you along that process? So if everything's going to be driven by budget, then you need to have everything designed and planned as early as you possibly can on the project.
Mm-hmm.
If you're concerned about quality, then you need to give up a little bit on your schedule to get the end result that you want. And I think applying that consistency and being, true to that really helps the whole team, because then you can kind of set that tempo and have a plan that, cost is important. So it might be worth waiting for another bid because it may be lower.
Mm-hmm.
Or we need to react now because prices are changing. I mean, we just had that for the last 3 years, where it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
don't wait, because
Yep.
either the sub will not be available or the cost is going to go up. So I think that to me is just being able to really have a plan and a vision and work with your team to develop that, so that everyone is sidestepping the correct direction. And then it becomes fun. I think you can't take away that word of just building can actually be enjoyable and fun and a good experience. And part of that is from your role as a client of advocating for yourself, being prepared, and being consistent.
And I think one of the big differences in people who enjoy their construction project and have a little fun along the way is setting up that good team, right? If you
Yes.
assemble a team that is difficult to work with, and maybe not as organized, and maybe not as consistent, then it's probably not going to be an enjoyable process, right? But
Right.
if you have a good team that you can work well with, that you can talk to and communicate with, and that is experienced enough, sure, things are going to come up, but it could be a really cool, fun process for you. And I know I still love it. However many years I've been doing this, 27 years, 28 years, it's like I still I still have a lot of fun going out
Yes.
to the job site and seeing these things being built. So have a little fun out there.
Yes, absolutely.
Great, Mark. Well, this has been a fantastic discussion. And I'd love to have you back sometime.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. Well, I
Great.
appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.